Želeo bih da vam ispričam priču o divljem zapadu. Ali ona nema nikakve veze sa onom koju su veličali vesterni. Čak ni sa onim što sam učio u školi u Kaliforniji. Nastala je vekovima pre nego što su rođene Sjedinjene države.
My ancestors came from Spain. Yeah, and they were settled in New Mexico, and then they come to Colorado. Well, I think that we were mixed with Indian, the Navajo, I think. Yeah, that's Spanish with Navajo, yeah.
Reč je o malo poznatoj priči o američkom, hispanoameričkom i meksičkom divljem zapadu.
I would even go further than saying it's collective amnesia. It's almost forced amnesia.
Odrastao sam u Kaliforniji, u prisilnoj amneziji koja truje Sjedinjene države. Dakle, sledeći mitove sa divljeg zapada, želeo sam da pronađem ovu izbrisanu istoriju. Fotografisao sam tragove i zaboravljene potomke koji do nje vode, kako bih rekonstruisao nestali album naše zajedničke prošlosti. Granica između Sjedinjenih država i Meksika. Tri 3.000 kilometara, ograđenih zidom i pod prismotrom vojske. Ona definiše odnos Sjedinjenih država prema Latinskoj Americi. Ova granica je opsesija. Međutim, ona nije uvek bila tu. Ali ko se seća vremena kada se ta granica nalazila 1100 km severnije, kad su Sjedinjene države bile ograničene na svoju istočnu obalu, a ceo divlji zapad se zvao Severni Meksiko.
It's something that's kind of like hidden history for much of the United States. There's a lot of people who have no idea that this part of the country belonged to Mexico, or that, Mexico stretched all the way to Nevada and Utah, of course, including California and Texas, and the history of how those lands came to be part of the United States through conquest, which is still a very charged word. There are many people in this country who refuse to even believe that happened in that way. I think part of that has to do with kind of the venomous time that we're in, really, where, Mexico is somehow viewed as this lawless place, or a place that's somehow threatening to the United States still to this present day. And just without really appreciating the contributions that Mexico has made to our society.
Tek 1848. godine granica se sa severa pomerila na jug, kad su Sjedinjene države napale i okupirale Meksiko. Pre nego što su anektirale polovinu te zemlje, to jest 2 miliona kvadratnih kilometara. To je bilo najkolosalnije osvajanje teritorija u njihovoj istoriji.
The world over. In How the West Was Won, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Cinerama have brought together the biggest and most distinguished all-star cast in entertainment history, characterizing the men and women who conquered the wilderness, finding a new life in this immense human saga of the American West. James Stewart is the mountain man. Henry Fonda is the plainsman. Adventurers such as these first explored the land.
There's a real kind of mythic formulation of how the West came to be, and that there was this, ever-expanding frontier, that it was largely unpopulated, that it was some sort of like pristine wilderness or pristine prairies, and then these settlers came in on caravans from the east and introduced civilization and liberty to these lands.
How the West was won startles your eyes with a huge and colorful panorama of the glorious frontier, with all its reckless adventure and its awesome violence.
When in fact, it was just a history of absolute brutal conquest and often genocide as well.
You don't want to miss that legendary historic gunfight that happened right here in Tombstone, Arizona in 18...
Umesto suočavanja s prošlošću, Sjedinjene države su izabrale da napišu legendu. Onu o divljem zapadu, koji bi sam Bog poverio belim anglosaksonskim i protestantskim doseljenicima na te prostore. Tu je prikazana sudbina Sjedinjenih država. Za nametanje ovog mita bile su potrebne slike, a Amerikanci su znali kako da ih stvore. Prvi naseljenici koji su otišli na zapad 1848. godine u svom prtljagu su imali oružje moćnije od svojih koltova, prve fotografske aparate. Tako su ovekovečili ep o traperima i kopačima zlata. Izmislili sopstvene junake i slikama ispisali priču koja počinje od njih. O svetu pre 1848. godine, s druge strane, nemamo fotografije.
That is so significant. Repeat that 1,000 times. We can't even find ourselves. We have been so thoroughly erased. We have been so not mirrored. And that is violence and conquest at the threshold of the soul. Yes, they took the land and they hung people and all of these things happened. But to impose this invisibility is so destructive and so corrosive.
All right, I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, go, and then I'm going to ask you not to blink for about 8 seconds. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Zato sam želeo da sastavim nedostajući fotoalbum naše prošlosti.
After 3, don't blink. 1, 2, 3. All right. All right, from now on, no moving. Now you can relax and breathe. Yeah, that's a heck of a flash at the end, isn't it?
Hteo sam da pronađem naslednike onih koji su ove zapadne zemlje naselili mnogo pre američkog osvajanja. Indijance, Hispance ili potomke afričkih robova, Meksikance mešovitih korena.
When I look at the picture, it tells me that I'm Zuni. See, that's the distinctive part, is I don't look like any other tribe. I don't look like the Plains. I don't look like the Athabascan. I look Pueblo. I want to be that Indian in the picture without being anybody's token Indian. I don't want to be Chief Wahoo. I don't want to be Redskins. That's just how I feel now.
Gomeo Bobelu mi je poželao dobrodošlicu u svoj dom u Zuni Pueblu, na raskršću Arizone i Novog Meksika. To je jedno od najstarijih indijanskih sela.
I would say time immortal is how we describe it, because our people migrated from Ribbon Falls, Grand Canyon. That is our place of emergence. Behind me is our Zuni sacred mountain. We call it Doa Yalani. Doa means corn, Yalani means mountain. Ela koyata kitacho. Ona ala shinawe. Lokaya donne. Ono to take on awanik chetu. Dosho itena bush quaina. Sawana kitsamakzume. Yamauna elata. Yami kwani take bush kunon awanik chetu. Ona ala shinawe. Onana wikina wanti kwani unate. Tono awich. Tono awich mam. Ela kwam. Sometimes, you know, the rituals of our ancestors are innate. So if you see us doing weird stuff, it's just part of what Grandma used to do a long time ago. And it's nothing evil. It's all nature worship.
Njegovi preci, Ašivi, kako su sebe nazivali, ovde su živeli pre više od 3000 godina. To je jedan od stotina domorodačkih naroda koji su naseljavali ovaj kontinent kao Apači, Komanči, Navaho indijanci, Mivoki, Hopiji, Akome. Bili su nomadi, ali i sedelački narodi, ili oni koji su bili na čelu moćnih imperija sa snažno utemeljenim jezicima i kulturama. I daleko od takozvanih divljaka koje su u westernima nagrdili.
They don't really tell the whole history, so we're always trying to connect the dots. And there's always somebody that comes along that tells us the correct history. And so, you know, we're always finding the truth one way or another.
Pratio sam ga na putu u pustinju, do Havikuha, drevnog grada naroda Zuni. Tamo je 1540. godine španski konkvistador Coronado došao da traži mitske gradove pune zlata. To je ključni trenutak koji je istražio Kenny Bovekati, arheolog koji proučava pleme Zuni Pueblo Indijanaca.
This is where now Coronado is hired to come and conquer these great 7 cities of gold. July 7th, 1540, following the same route, they came through, and then, of course, these flat areas were engulfed with fields of corn, and this is where the battle between the Spanish and the Ashiwi over the course of a day and a half. So you just follow me along the trail.
This is pretty intense, man. Did it make you angry?
No, it fascinated me because,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's history.
I look at it this way. What if the Spanish never came? Would we dominate our country, or, you know, what would the factors have been? I'm pretty sure we would have gone to war anyway with somebody, with the people coming in. So this is where it all began, and many lifestyles, and even relationships started to develop. And so, of course, it all sort of brought the two peoples together.
Sudbina Severne Amerike je ovde zapisana 80 godina pre nego što je prvi anglosaksonski naseljenik sišao s broda Mayflower. Zato što su stopama konkvistadora došli španski kolonisti. Stari domorodački gradovi su tako postali pueblosi. Havikuh je postao Zuni. Na mestima nekadašnjih hramova starosedelaca podizane su katoličke crkve.
Everything went underground. We could no longer practice our culture. We could not have open dances. like right now. And everything was done in hiding. And everybody migrated up to the mountain for refuge. And so those that got left behind, you know, they didn't make it. So when I think of Coronado and how much our world has changed, I always think about when I go to the museum, what they left behind. They left behind a lot of metal. They were left behind a lot of weapons. And they also shared a little bit of their culture that our people carry now. You know, so we adapt, we assimilate, and we just grow.
Otkrio sam vrlo malo tragova ovakve prošlosti u Sjedinjenim državama. Fotografisao sam neke španske misije poput one u San Javieru u Arizoni. Na stenovitim zidinama prolaza El Moro u blizini Zuni Puebla vekovima su uklesivali imena i datume. Oni su prava knjiga u kamenu. Imena prvih američkih naseljenika počivaju pored imena konkvistadora. Juan de Oñate je bio krvoločni prvi španski guverner Novog Meksika. Imena se mešaju s milenijumskim kamenim zapisima naroda Ašivi.
My father's family has been here since the very beginning of the whole colonial experiment. One of my ancestors came with the Oñate expedition in 1598. Another of my ancestors came in 1610 and founded the city of Santa Fe, Pedro de Peralta. They intermarried with Native Americans. My grandmother was the daughter of a woman who was purchased for a bag of flour, and this was in the 19th century. You know, there was this captive economy here, and there are a lot of Native Americans who were brought into Hispanic families that way. So it's really a multifaceted, complex history.
Simon Romero je izveštač New York Timesa. On piše o dešavanjima na granici između Sjedinjenih država i Meksika. Bori se da se ne zaboravi istorija u kojoj počivaju njegovi vlastiti koreni.
This place is just, I think, incredibly evocative in many ways, and just especially meaningful to my own family. My dad was born in a village not far from here called Manzano, so this is where my family has been for centuries. Kind of where it all started for us in a way. This was a huge experiment, and really a tragically flawed one in the 17th century, where the Franciscan missionaries, they brought Indians here to gather salt. And these were the Tompiro Indians. They were enslaved, you know, under the justification that they were being converted to Christianity, and that indigenous people eventually disappeared, unfortunately, as a result of what happened here. You know, there was also a lot of intermarriage that took place between the colonists that came here and the Indians. There was a lot of mixing that happened, and that mixture produced the villages that are still around here to this day. I think that there's really been kind of a willful ignorance about what happened, because those memories are pretty painful. What happened here was a history of conquest and exploitation and religious dominance. And it was the reality. It's what really kind of made us who we are today. And it takes the good and the bad, I think, combined together. And I think it's just really powerful to still have a place like this that you can go to and use it, hopefully, to reflect on what happened and to learn from it. And also just to teach people about the basic history of this place. This existed well over a century before the United States even was an idea. Before the Declaration of Independence was even drafted. There were people here creating a society, and they still are.
Autohtoni narodi su se odupirali kolonizaciji. Bilo je pobuna, poput one Pueblo Indijanaca iz 1680. godine, kada su Špance proterali na 12 godina. Po povratku Evropljani su napravili neke ustupke. Dogodio bi se i poneki masakr, ali zajednički život se nastavio. To će biti istorija američkog zapada u naredna 2 veka, ali će uskoro biti zaboravljena. Godine 1776. sudbina Severne Amerike se promenila. 4. jula u Filadelfiji na istočnoj obali očevi osnivači Sjedinjenih Američkih Država proglašavaju nezavisnost. Uvereni u svoje vrednosti, svoju demokratiju i svoju sudbinu na ovom kontinentu. Iste godine na zapadnoj obali Španska imperija se širi. Ekspedicija Juana Batiste de Anze otvara novi put do naselja Alta u Kaliforniji. Osnovani su gradovi Monterey, San Francisco, Los Angeles.
We're not taught a lot in our history books, in U.S. history. There's literally nothing of U.S. history other than 1776 and the westward movement. They don't tell you that when the people moved from the eastern U.S. to the western U.S., that there were many people here already. They were living, they were thriving. The whole Western concept is coming in wagon trains. That's not how it was for everyone.
Leni Trujillo je čuvar uspomena na Los Californianose, potomke prvih meksičkih doseljenika u Kaliforniju. On je od genealogije učinio svoje oružje u borbi protiv amnezije.
This photo is probably about 1925. The little baby, she is currently 94 years old. In the photo on the far left is Concepcion Martinez. She would be my second great-grandmother of mine. She was born about 1840 in northern New Mexico. That would mean that as a child, as a young child, she came across the old Spanish trail from New Mexico to California with her family. Coming across the old Spanish trail, the people literally walked. So I'd love to tell the grandchildren that your great ancestors literally walked from New Mexico to California. I've uncovered that some of the founders, the very earliest founders of the city of Los Angeles, their ancestors were from many areas. In the church records, you can find description of these people. The church and early census records, you can find the description of these people. They're listed as negro, as mulatto, as mixed, they're as coyotes, as indigenous. These people were all very, very mixed. In Mexico, they enslaved the indigenous people and threw them into the mines. And they imported many, many African slaves, to much more than people ever know about. But the difference was, in Mexico, the African slaves blended in, married in with the local populations. In the United States, they didn't. They were kept separated. And to this day, that's why we still have the deep racial divisions that we have in this country, is because the culture, the dominant culture, did not want to blend with anyone else.
Prema španskom zakonu, u Meksiku je rob mogao da otkupi svoju slobodu i postane slobodan čovek. Oslobođene, ali bez zemlje i sredstava, afromeksičke porodice su u potrazi za boljim životom okušale sreću u kalifornijskom naselju Alta. Neki su tamo napredovali, poput porodice Pia Pike, posljednjeg meksičkog guvernera provincije. On je potomak ovih afromeksikanaca.
It hasn't been taught in our history classes. It hasn't been taught in the schools. So how are the students going to know, unless they do the research themselves, that the founders of Los Angeles were of mixed race? They're not going to know because we don't teach it in our schools.
Vetar nezavisnosti nije poštedeo Špansko carstvo. Meksikanci su se pobunili protiv španske krune 1810. godine. Nezavisnost Meksika je proglašena 1821. Ustav kojim se uspostavlja nezavisna republika donet je 1824. Meksičko državljanstvo se dodeljuje ljudima svih rasa. I dok je ropstvo napredovalo u južnom delu Sjedinjenih država, u svim meksičkim provincijama ono je 1829. godine ukinuto. Istorijska granica je tada vodila ovuda, kroz zaliv, između američke robovlasničke Luizijane i još uvek meksičke provincije Coahuila i Texas, budućeg Teksasa. Prešli su je odbegli robovi u potrazi za slobodom. Ali i angloamerički migranti, berači pamuka u potrazi za zemljom na kojoj bi radili.
Now, they didn't use the word immigrant then, but what were they doing? They were going from one country to another. That's immigration, right? And so for me to use that term immigrant gives people pause. They say, oh, he's talking about the colonists or the settlers. But it's the same people, right? They're doing the same action. But to call them settlers is to normalize their presence and to ignore the historical border, right? To ignore nation states at that particular time. So the only nation state that matters is the American nation state.
Raul Ramos je Meksikanac iz Teksasa. On je istoričar nove generacije koji se bavi mitovima Divljeg zapada. Mitovi su ovde uzdignuti na nivo zvanične istorije, sve do naftnih rezervoara.
Welcome to sacred ground. Welcome to the cradle of Texas liberty. Welcome to the Alamo. We want to welcome you, all of you, here to the Alamo for the 31st annual dawn ceremony where, 184 years ago, at this time, and in this place where you now stand or sit, the history of Texas, Mexico, and even the United States suddenly changed forever.
1, 2, 3.
Američki Teksas voli da veruje da je njegova istorija počela 1836. godine. Tada su se angloamerički migranti pobunili protiv Meksika i proglasili nezavisnu republiku. Svake godine 6. marta u zoru odaje im se počast na mestu najpoznatije bitke njihove revolucije, u El Alamu. Tamo je nastradao Davy Crockett, narodni heroj američkog zapada.
But so were all the Alamo defenders. Most of us came from other areas of the country. I came down here with my Tennessee boys. And smell a tactica brewing this morning. But we're at the ready.
I got the fastest horse, the surest shooting rifle, the prettiest sister, and the ugliest dog in all the USA. Now stand back, boys, I'm fixing to unwind.
And all the honor that I desire is that of defending, as a high private, in common with my fellow citizens, the honor and the liberties of our common country.
185 men fighting to their deaths against a horde of 7,000 in the most savage hand-to-hand combat in history. John Wayne as Colonel David Crockett, Richard Widmark as Jim Bowie, Lawrence Harvey as Colonel William Travis. The Alamo, recreating the 13 glorious days of the siege history will never forget, and you will always remember the Alamo.
Ne, Teksas nije zaboravio Alamo i žrtvovanje njegovih junaka, Travisa Bowija, Davija Crocketta. Sećanje na bitku živi i prenosi se generacijama. Ono je izvor ponosa i temelj identiteta.
What were the fighters who died in the Alamo fighting for, really? What was their cause? And the words that are used are freedom and liberty, but freedom and liberty to do what? And the idea was the freedom and liberty to bring their civilization and their culture, which they very explicitly felt was superior to Mexican culture and indigenous culture.
This is the type of weapon that William Barrett Travis used.
Oh, whoa!
And William Barrett Travis rode a horse. He was fond of horses. And he thought that everyone in the Texas cavalry should be armed with a double gun like this. So there were a lot of double guns. A lot of double guns were here at the Alamo.
The idea was that God gave us land to profit, to make it bountiful, as a gift to humanity, and that Mexicans and indigenous people were wasting it, and a wasted opportunity was a sin. It's not just a generic American who's coming to Texas. These were Southerners who were coming to Texas. And that idea of what America was and what it would be and where its industry came from relied on slavery. When you say, they're fighting for freedom, they saw the Mexican government elimination of slavery as taking away their freedom. So there's a very direct connection between the abolition of slavery in Mexico and the Texas Revolution.
Anglo-Amerikanci su pobedili u posljednjoj bici svoje revolucije 21. aprila 1836. ovde u San Jacintu. Teksas je 10 godina bio nezavisna republika koja nikada nije bila zvanično priznata. Njegov ustav vraća ropstvo, pa čak ga i nameće. Svima koji nisu bili belci, zabranjen je ulazak u Teksas. Godine 1845. Republika Teksas se zvanično pridružila Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama, čiji je predsjednik bio James Polk. On je verovao u neophodnost širenja Sjedinjenih Država. Bio je čovek s juga i robovlasnik koji je želeo da ojača takve uticaje naspram abolicionističkog severa. Osvajanje Teksasa je zato za njega predstavljalo važan napredak. U maju 1846. Polk je objavio rat Meksiku i napao ga. Američko osvajanje zapada može da počne.
It's hypocritical, I think, in a way that's really blatant, just to think like, the whole idea of manifest destiny and Americans bringing freedom and liberty with them and liberating, what's now the West, what wasn't, in some sense, actually introducing and strengthening and expanding the institution of slavery in what was then the north of Mexico. But of course, that's all uncomfortable to talk about, so many people prefer not to do it.
I u Kaliforniji se vešto skrivala prošlost. Kalifornija je postala američka ovde, u Sonomiji, blizu San Franciska. U junu 1846. godine neki anglosaksonski migranti napali su mali meksički garnizon od nekoliko vojnih kasarni. Nezavisnost njihove Kalifornije je proglašena nekoliko nedelja pre njenog prelaska pod kontrolu Sjedinjenih Država. Njihova zastava sa grubo iscrtanim medvedom održala se i postala je sveprisutni simbol Kalifornije. Ali zaboravljamo da kažemo da je sve počelo lažnom glasinom. Nju je pokrenuo beskrupulozni američki oficir John Fremont, koji je neke američke farmere uverio u laž da će ih Meksiko proterati sa njihove zemlje. Bez ikakvog legitimiteta, haotična i brutalna, njihova pobuna je bila odlučujuća za sudbinu Zapada. Od Teksasa pa sve do Kalifornije, Meksiko je izgubio rat i polovinu svoje teritorije. Ugovorom iz Guadalupe i Dalga, potpisanim u februaru 1848. godine, Sjedinjene Države su sebi pripojile ceo severni Meksiko, što čini više od 2 miliona kvadratnih kilometara tla. Izmaštana sudbina se ostvaruje od mora do blistavog mora, odnosno od jednog do drugog okeana, anglosaksonska civilizacija nameće svoje vrednosti, svoju ekonomiju i svoju istoriju. Riverside, u blizini Los Angelesa. Ovde su se naselili preci Lenija Truhilja, koji su došli peške iz Novog Meksika. Od njihovog poduhvata su ostale samo ruševine zemljanih kuća, ćerpič skriven u magacinu.
All right, I got you. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Well, we're here today, 2 days after Earth Day, to do some work here for the Trujillo Adobe. The adobe that is inside of this cover structure was built in 1862. The original adobe was built in 1842. And on the left would have been the bedroom, so come on in. Yeah. As you can tell, we're kind of smack dab in the middle of commercial territory. Unfortunately, the North Side neighborhood is probably rated number 26 in Riverside's 26 neighborhoods. It's always been, in my opinion, the backyard where the city put everything they didn't want anywhere else. And this is what we get. So now, and there's no blame and there's no pointing of fingers, but somehow this was disregarded or not known of. So now we have to make it known. In 2011,
Obnovili su stare zemljane zidove da bi povratili svoje mesto u istoriji, poput Lenija. Potomci porodice Trujillo nisu želeli da budu zaboravljeni. Osvajanje 1848. godine im, međutim, nije ostavilo prostora u njihovoj zemlji. Posle aneksije Kalifornije, afroameričkog guvernera Pija Pika zamenio je Amerikanac, Peter Barnett. On nije obnovio ropstvo, ali je zato sve ljude obojene kože lišio prava glasa. I dok pioniri i kopači zlata hrle na zapad, on poziva na, po njegovim rečima, rat do istrebljenja, sve do izumiranja indijanske rase.
But yeah, California was a place where, you had these explicit campaigns rewarding settlers to go in and wipe out indigenous populations. I think that California is really one of the most extreme examples of our forced amnesia in a way, of really how California came to be, of California's, contribution to the wealth and power of the United States, of the whole gold rush and what happened at that time.
It's not by accident that the histories aren't taught. The history of the entire Western movement across the United States was to erase everything before them. And they've been quite successful at that. They tried to erase the entire native culture. They haven't succeeded, but they've definitely tried.
Amerikanci su mešance, Meksikance, smatrali autohtonim stanovništvom lišenim prava i stavili su ih pod segregaciju svake vrste. Da bi preživeli, mnogi od njih su poricali svoj identitet.
They romanticized only the Spanish heritage, not recognizing their African heritage, their indigenous heritage, their mestizo heritage. In this country, it's always been probably more favorable to say you have European ancestors, which is Spain is European. You have European ancestors as opposed to Mexican ancestors. My view is that people of Mexican descent are portrayed as outsiders in the United States, even though they've been here longer than many of the people, especially when we're talking about the Southwest, where people were here for hundreds of years. I've never felt like an outsider here because I can exist in this land, in my world, whether, whatever somebody tells me, I can still exist here. And they can't take that away. We didn't cross the border crossed us.
So then the question becomes, where do you put that Mexican population that was there before Americans arrived, that were there before American expansion, who essentially become rendered immigrants. There's a saying, they become foreigners in their own country. And that's very much true in this case. But to become a foreigner in your own country really means to be historically rendered foreign, right? And rendered foreign in a particular telling of history.
We have so many different names, and almost none of them have been chosen by ourselves. They have all been imposed by the bureaucracy, and each one with its own agenda. And so I use the word Hispanic not because I like it or because it is in any way specific, but just because everybody knows what it means. And I've kind of given up, and now it's become even more complex. I mean, I started out, let's see, I started out as a Mexican-American, no, so we started out as a Spanish-American. Then we became Mexican-Americans, and then we were Chicanos, and it just went on and on and on. And now there's Latinx and Chicanx, and it's just really confusing.
Anita Otilija Rodriguez je pesnikinja i umetnica. U Taosu, malom gradu na severu Novog Meksika, ona spasava od zaborava kulturu svoga naroda. Otkriva ono što je izbrisano.
I tell my people's stories in art, so I've spent my life trying to preserve, you know, like the architectural traditions, the legends, the stories of a people who are vanishing. And this is something that I inherited from my father, who knew his culture was on the cusp of being swallowed. And he was a great storyteller, you know, and he told the stories and suffused me with this passion to save it, to keep it. It was forbidden to speak Spanish at school. If you spoke Spanish at school, you would be punished. And there was all this incredible prejudice against local people. We were described as drunken and dirty and ignorant and primitive. There was never any mention of the American conquest. We woke up one morning and, ay, pues somos gringos. Todos, we're all Americans now. And it was not explained. And neither was the Spanish conquest. I mean, that wasn't talked about either. And so we were erased, and our history was erased, and we became invisible. This amnesia, I mean, you're studying this amnesia, and so am I. I mean, I know what purpose it serves. We know that it serves power. We know that it serves the process of colonialization. By erasing us, the land could be taken, like it became this kind of impersonal, you know, acquisition of real estate, not the living flesh of Mother Earth, but it's just real estate, you know, and it didn't really belong to anybody. They weren't doing anything with it. I mean, an Anglo guy actually said that to me. I says, well, they stole half of it. He says, yeah, but you weren't doing anything with it. You know, no, we were leaving it to, you know, we weren't destroying it. They wanted our land, but not us. Like a cold, pale wind, pálido y frío, they came, buying the land, then the plazas, and then nuestros casas. No nos ven, mi hijo. Come on.
Come on. When I was 6 years old, I used to go up to them mountains over there with my dad, with the sheep. And I used to spend over there a week every other 8 days. They used to change, you know, because he had sheep with his brother-in-law. And we used to change every week. Yeah. Well, we were raised here, and then when I got married, I went to Colorado Springs, and I was living over there, but I used to have dreams of someday I was gonna get my dad's property and make a living here.
Boni Sanchez se vratio kući u Rancho de los Sanchez u dolini San Luis u Koloradu. Stočar je, kao i njegov otac i njegovi preci koji su bili mestici, mešavina Španaca i pripadnika plemena Navaho Indijanaca. Pravi pravcati kauboji. Boni potpuno pripada epu o divljem zapadu, kao i svi oni koje sam sreo duž celog velikog američkog zapada i čija su lica ovekovečena na ovim staklenim pločama. Tako je stvoren rekonstruisani fotografski album, arhiv prošlosti koju treba ponovo osvojiti.